My childhood best friend always saw me as her charity case, so when she asked me to be her bridesmaid, I knew it was out of pity. She bragged for months about booking the most exclusive wedding venue in the state. What she didn't know was that I'd just bought it, and her reservation was the first thing I canceled. Chloe's engagement party was held at her parents' penthouse overlooking the city. I wore the same blue dress I'd worn to 3 other weddings. She wore custom champagne silk and a diamond that could blind you. We'd been friends since 3rd grade when my grandmother cleaned houses for families like hers. Chloe had always been the princess. I was the one who carried her books and listened to her dreams. Some things never change. She found me near the balcony, her smile bright and brittle. "Sloane, I've been looking for you." She pulled me into a hug that didn't touch her. "I have the most exciting news. You're going to be one of my bridesmaids." It wasn't a question. It was an announcement, a benevolent offering. I smiled, the way I'd smiled for 20 years. "I'd be honored, Chloe." Her eyes flickered over my dress, my simple earrings, my uncharted life. "I know things have been quiet for you lately. I wanted you to feel included." She squeezed my arm. "This will be good for you. You'll meet people." The pity was so familiar I could taste it. It was in every syllable. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "And wait until you hear about the venue. We got the Celestine Estate." Even I had heard of the Celestine, a historic manor on private cliffs booked years in advance. Impossible to get. A symbol. "How?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Her smile turned smug. "Daddy knows the owner. Or knew. The old man passed, but his son honored the booking. It's the last wedding they're hosting before they sell the place." She sighed dramatically. "It's so tragic, but at least I'll be the last bride to marry there. It's poetic, really." I nodded, sipping my drink to hide my expression. The last bride, the final spectacle. It was so perfectly Chloe. Later, at the bridesmaids' luncheon, where I was clearly the only one who checked the price tag on the salad, Chloe passed out velvet boxes. Inside each was a delicate bracelet. "So we all match," she chirped. Mine was smaller than the others, a slightly different clasp. A variant, she called it. A mistake from the jeweler. But we all knew. Even in unity, I was set apart. That night, I sat in my quiet apartment, the too small bracelet on my wrist. I thought of Chloe's smug smile, the Celestine Estate, the last bride. And then I thought of Isadora Vance's words, spoken over tea weeks before. "Power isn't about making noise, Sloane. It's about changing the landscape so quietly, no one hears the earthquake until the ground is already split." I picked up my phone, scrolled to a number I'd never dialed, the one labeled Vance Holdings, Acquisitions. I didn't call yet. I just held the phone in my hand, the bracelet gleaming under the lamplight. The game wasn't over. It had just found a new player. And this time, I wasn't carrying the books. I was writing the rules. The office of Vance Holdings looked nothing like I expected. No marble floors or gilded frames, just floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek lines, and a quiet so deep it felt like its own kind of power. Isadora Vance met me not in a boardroom, but in a sunlit library nook, 2 cups of steaming jasmine tea between us. "Tell me," she said, her eyes knowing. "Not what's wrong. Just tell me." I told her about Chloe, the bracelet, the Celestine Estate, the last bride fantasy. I didn't sound angry. I sounded tired. Tired of being the footnote in someone else's story. Isadora listened without interruption. When I finished, she sipped her tea and gazed out at the city below. "The Celestine," she said softly. "I know the family. The son is selling. He's in over his head. Wants a quiet, quick exit." She turned her gaze back to me. "What is it you want, Sloane? To embarrass her? To hurt her?" I thought of Chloe's smile, the pity in her eyes, the way she made smallness feel like a costume I could never take off. "I don't want to hurt her," I said. "I just don't want to be small anymore." A slow, approving smile touched Isadora's lips. "Good. Revenge is a messy fuel, but dignity is a foundation." She set her cup down. "We will purchase the Celestine Estate. Not you, not me. A shell corporation. Untraceable. Quiet. You will be the silent majority owner. I will handle the lawyers. My breath caught. Just like that? Just like that, she said. But understand, once you own the stage, you must decide what play you want to perform. Ownership is responsibility. This isn't just about a wedding. It's about what happens after. I nodded, my hands steady around my teacup. For the first time, the plan felt real and heavy. The following weeks were a study in duality. By day, I played my part, the dutiful, humble bridesmaid. I attended fittings where Chloe criticized my posture. I smiled through cake tastings where my opinion was never asked. I held her bouquet during the floral consult, a living prop. By night, I sat with Isadora and her legal team in anonymous conference rooms. I signed papers with a name that wasn't mine, Eleanor Holdings LLC, named for my grandmother. I learned about property taxes, heritage site regulations, and liquor licenses. I wasn't just buying a venue, I was learning to own it. Chloe's behavior sharpened as the wedding drew closer. At the bridal shower, she pulled me aside. I need you to handle the guest check-in on the day of, she said, not asking. You're so organized, and it'll keep you busy. She meant it would keep me out of the peak too. I just smiled. Of course. The final meeting with the venue's seller happened on a rainy Thursday. A tired-looking man in his 40s sat across from Isadora and me. He never looked at me twice. He saw a young woman in simple clothes and assumed I was an assistant. I'm glad it's going to a family, he said to Isadora, missing the irony entirely. This place deserves quiet stewardship. Isadora nodded gracefully. It will be in careful hands. When he left, the papers signed and the keys virtually transferred, Isadora handed me a single, old-fashioned brass key. This is for the garden gate, she said. The rest are digital, but this one feels like a beginning. I held the key. It was cold, solid, real. That night, Chloe texted the bridal group chat, 1 week to go, Celestine brides. Get ready for the wedding of the century. I read the message in the dark of my apartment, the brass key on the table beside me. I didn't reply. I just watched the screen glow, then fade to black. The stage was mine, and the play was about to begin. 1 week before the wedding, Chloe's frenzy reached its peak. The bridal group chat was a torrent of voice notes, all-caps texts, and last-minute demands. My role had been solidified. I was the errand girl. The one tasked with picking up the guest welcome bags, confirming the valet schedule, and handling what Chloe called the logistical dust. It was intentional. It kept me on the outskirts, too busy to be seen, too humble to be near the center. I didn't mind. Every errand was a quiet victory. Every email I sent as Sloane on behalf of the bride was a lie I wore like armor, because in another inbox, under another name, I was signing off on vendor contracts, security layouts, and staffing schedules as Eleanor Holdings LLC. The Celestine Estate was now mine, officially, legally, invisibly. I visited the property for the first time as the owner on a misty Tuesday morning. I used the brass key at the garden gate. The grounds were breathtaking. Manicured gardens, stone pathways, a cliffside view of the ocean that felt like the edge of the world. The manor itself was all weathered stone and ivy, exactly as it looked in Chloe's endless Pinterest boards. The estate manager, a serious woman named Gwen, met me at the front doors. She'd been briefed by the Vance lawyers. Her demeanor was professional, but her eyes held a flicker of curiosity. Ms. Eleanor, she said, using the alias. Welcome. The team is prepared for your review. I toured the space not as a future guest, but as a steward. I saw the grand hall where Chloe planned to say her vows, the east wing where the champagne toast was scheduled, the bride's suite where she would put on her designer gown and feel like a queen. Gwen handed me the final wedding folder. The Harrington-Devlin wedding, she said. Everything is confirmed. Final payment is due tomorrow. I took the folder. Inside was Chloe's entire dream, itemized. The $10,000 floral arch, the 5-tier vanilla buttercream cake, the string quartet she'd flown in from Vienna. At the bottom of the last page was the clause I'd been waiting for. All events subject to cancellation by ownership with written notice 7 days prior. No refunds. Has the final notice been sent to the client? I asked, my voice calm. Not yet, Gwen said. It's scheduled to go out this afternoon. I looked out the window toward the cliffs. The sky was clearing. The ocean was a sheet of hammered silver. "Send it now," I said. Gwen nodded once. "Of course." Back in my car, I watched my personal phone light up. The bridal group chat exploded first. "Chloe, what is this email?" "Chloe, notice of cancellation? Is this a joke?" "Chloe, someone call the estate now. This is a mistake." Photos of the email flooded the chat. The header was elegant, formal. The message was brutally simple. "Due to a change in ownership, the Celestine Estate regrets to inform you that your event has been cancelled, effective immediately. All further inquiries may be directed to the office of Eleanor Holdings, LLC. Panic turned to fury. Chloe called me. Her voice was a shrill blade. "Sloan, you're good at this stuff. Call them. Fix this. Do something." "I'll see what I can do," I said, my voice steady. I could hear her crying in the background, not sad tears, frustrated, furious ones. This wasn't a tragedy to her. It was an insult, a cosmic slight against her perfect narrative. That evening, Isadora called. "The first wave has crashed," she said, a note of amusement in her voice. "How does it feel?" I looked at the key on my table. "Quiet," I said. "It feels quiet." "Good," she replied. "The loud part comes next. Be ready." I didn't have to wait long. By 8 p.m., Chloe's father had gotten involved. Lawyers were called, threats of lawsuits were made, but the contract was ironclad. The cancellation stood. In the group chat, Chloe's messages grew desperate, then eerily silent. Then a new message appeared, this one only to me. "Chloe, meet me tomorrow. The estate office, 10 a.m. I'm going in person to fix this. You're coming with me." I read the message 3 times. A smile touched my lips for the first time in weeks. She wanted to go to the estate and demand her dream back. She just didn't know she'd be demanding it from me. I typed back one word, "Okay." The stage was set. The lights were about to come up. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't in the audience. I was the one holding the script. Chloe didn't speak on the drive. Her silence was sharp, full of rehearsed arguments and quiet rage. She stared straight ahead, her perfect wedding now a legal battlefield she was determined to win. We were led into the Celestine Estate conservatory. Sunlight flooded the room, glinting off the distant ocean. At the head of a long table sat Isadora Vance. Chloe stopped short. All her prepared fury dissolved into shocked recognition. "Mrs. Vance?" she said, her voice suddenly small. "The cancellation is final," Isadora said, her tone polite but unyielding. "The new owner has decided to cease all event hosting. I'm sorry." Chloe's carefully constructed composure began to splinter. "Please," she whispered. "Is there any room for negotiation? A donation? My father—" Isadora held up a hand. "I'm not the owner, Chloe. I merely represent her interests." She paused, her eyes flicking toward me. "But the owner is here." Confusion washed over Chloe's face. She glanced around the room, at Gwen, at me, back at Isadora. "Where?" Isadora's gaze rested firmly on me. "Right there." Time seemed to slow. Chloe's head turned, her eyes locked on mine. I watched the realization travel through her. Denial, confusion, disbelief, and finally, a cold, humiliating understanding. "No," she breathed, the word barely audible. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm. It didn't shake. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. You did this? You bought it?" "Eleanor Holdings," I said. "Named for my grandmother." She took a step back as if struck. All the years of condescension, the pitying smiles, the charity case treatment, it all curdled in the air between us. "You ruined my wedding," she whispered, venom in her tone. "You ruined our friendship a long time ago," I replied. "I just decided to stop pretending otherwise." Tears of fury filled her eyes. Not sadness, rage, humiliation. "You think this makes you something? You're just a petty girl with a grudge." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm the petty girl who owns the property you're standing on." She had no answer to that. The truth was too solid, too simple. She looked at Isadora, betrayal written across her face. You helped her? I honored a debt, Isadora said simply. One you never knew existed. Chloe stood there, exposed. The performance was over. The audience had seen behind the curtain. She had nothing left. No leverage, no script, no power. Gwen opened the conservatory door. The silent dismissal was clear. Chloe didn't look at me again. She walked out, her heels echoing down the hall, her perfect posture stiff with defeat. Isadora placed a hand on my shoulder. The stage is yours, Sloane, she said softly. What happens next? I looked out at the ceremony lawn, empty and waiting. Now, I said, I decide what to build on it. I did not cancel Chloe's wedding. 2 days after our meeting at the estate, I called her. Her voice was flat, stripped of its usual shine and sharpness. She asked if I was calling to gloat. I told her I was calling to offer her the venue back. She was silent for a long moment before giving a bitter laugh. She asked what the price was, if it was her soul. I told her there was no price, but there were new rules. I invited her back to the Celestine, just her, with no parents, no fiancé, and no audience to perform for. We walked the ceremony lawn at sunset, the same lawn she believed she had lost forever. I told her she could still get married here, this Saturday, with everything as originally planned. She watched me with suspicion, waiting for the trap to be revealed. I explained the new terms. I would not be a bridesmaid. I would be a guest, seated with the family. And she would introduce me to her parents and her guests not as her humble childhood friend, but as the owner of the Celestine Estate, and she would have to mean it. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She was a strategist, and she understood power, even when it was not in her hands. Finally, she asked me why. Why would I give it back after everything? I looked out at the cliffs and the ocean, at the quiet grandeur of the place I now owned. I told her I did not want to be the villain in her story, and I did not want her to be the villain in mine. I just wanted the old story between us to end. She was quiet for a long time, the wind pulling at her carefully styled hair. Then softly, she admitted she had been a terrible friend. I agreed. She did not argue or make excuses. She simply accepted it. Then she said she would do it. The introduction, the seat, all of it. The wedding went ahead as planned. The flowers arrived, the string quartet played, and the extravagant cake was served. I wore a simple slate-gray dress and sat in the second row beside Isadora Vance. When Chloe walked down the aisle, she looked genuinely radiant. But when she reached the front, she turned not to her groom, but to the crowd. She asked for a moment before they began. Then she called my name and asked me to stand. Every head in the garden turned to look at me. I stood. Chloe's voice was clear and steady over the gentle music. She told everyone that I was not only her oldest friend, but also the visionary new owner of the Celestine Estate. She said that without my generosity, this day would not have been possible. It was not an apology, but it was a public recognition. It was the truth, finally spoken out loud. After the ceremony, she found me near the terrace. She thanked me, her words quiet but clear. She acknowledged that I did not have to do what I did. I told her I knew. She hesitated, then nodded and walked back to her reception. Isadora appeared beside me, a small approving smile on her lips. She told me I had not just bought a venue, I had bought my way out of a story that never fit me. That night, after all the guests had left, I walked the empty gardens alone. The fairy lights glowed above me, and the ocean murmured below the cliffs. This beautiful place was mine, but more importantly, my life was finally my own. I was no longer playing a role or living in someone else's shadow. The wedding was over, the old story was closed, and for the first time, the next chapter belonged entirely to me.